Imagine owning a peaceful farmhouse, only for the HOA to try and seize it until they discovered you control their entire financial world. What happens next is a shocking twist that flips the power dynamic forever. The day the HOA attempted to seize the farmhouse began like any other. The sun had just started to dip below the horizon, casting a soft, golden glow across the sprawling estate. It was a peaceful evening, with the usual sounds of crickets and distant birdsong filling the air. The owner, sitting on the porch of the farmhouse, had no idea that his world was about to be turned upside down. The Homeowners Association, HOA, had been a constant, often overbearing presence in the neighborhood. But this time, they were about to take things too far. The HOA had sent several warning letters over the past few months, citing issues with the farmhouse's exterior and demanding that certain repairs be made within a strict timeline. These minor infractions, such as an outdated fence and a few overgrown shrubs, were nothing more than typical maintenance issues that any homeowner could easily fix. But the HOA had a reputation for its strict rules and relentless enforcement. That evening, the HOA representatives arrived at the farmhouse unannounced. They marched up the driveway with their typical air of authority, clipboard in hand, ready to issue their final ultimatum. As the representatives approached, the owner greeted them with a polite but wary smile, already anticipating the confrontation. The head of the HOA delegation wasted no time. With a stern look, he informed the owner that they had failed to meet the deadline for the repairs and that if the issues were not resolved immediately, the HOA would have no choice but to take legal action, including the possibility of seizing the property. The words hit hard, though the owner had been bracing for this moment. It was a move that seemed out of proportion to the nature of the infractions. The farmhouse had been well maintained, and the complaints seemed petty in comparison to the larger issues facing the neighborhood. Yet, the HOA was determined. The representatives made it clear that they had the power to make the owner's life very difficult. The owner stood firm, refusing to back down and suggesting that the HOA reconsider their heavy-handed approach. But the HOA, with its relentless bureaucracy, was unmoved. The tension in the air was thick, and it seemed as though the battle had only just begun. What the HOA didn't know, however, was that the owner was about to deliver a revelation that would turn the tables completely. Just as the HOA representatives were about to escalate the situation, the owner paused and calmly dropped a bombshell. With an air of quiet confidence, they revealed that they weren't just another homeowner in the neighborhood. They held a much more significant stake in the community than the HOA had ever imagined. The owner had quietly purchased the mortgage bank that held the financial interests of not only their farmhouse, but of many homes within the HOA's jurisdiction. The realization hit the HOA delegates like a sudden shockwave. The farmhouse wasn't just a piece of property to be fought over. It was now a chess piece in a much larger game. The owner's eyes narrowed as they continued. They explained that, as the owner of the mortgage bank, they had the power to influence financial decisions that impacted the entire neighborhood. Not only could they potentially call in loans, but they could also restructure mortgages, essentially controlling the very financial backbone of the HOA's operations. The shock was palpable on the faces of the representatives as they began to grasp the enormity of the situation. The HOA had been aggressive, but they had no idea that the owner held the keys to the financial stability of the entire area. The tension in the air was thick, as the owner's calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the stunned reactions of the HOA representatives. This wasn't just a battle over property. It was a power struggle that reached into the very heart of the neighborhood's financial infrastructure. What had seemed like a simple dispute over code violations had now morphed into a fight for control, not only of the farmhouse but of the HOA's future itself. The owner made it clear that they had no intention of being intimidated by the HOA's tactics. Instead, they saw an opportunity to level the playing field and turn the tables. The HOA had underestimated the influence they wielded, and now the tables had turned in an instant. What the HOA didn't realize was that they had just triggered a chain of events that would force them to reconsider their entire approach to governance and to their relationship with this particular homeowner. The game had changed, and the owner was in full control. As the HOA representatives struggled to comprehend the magnitude of the revelation, the owner began to delve deeper into the financial web that they had so carefully constructed. The purchase of the mortgage bank had been a strategic decision made years ago, well before any tensions with the HOA had surfaced. At the time, the owner had seen an opportunity not just for personal investment, but to secure a level of control that few could have imagined. They had quietly become the financial backbone of the entire neighborhood, holding the mortgages of many homes within the HOA's jurisdiction. This wasn't just about owning property. It was about owning the very system that allowed the HOA to function. The owner explained how they had strategically bought up distressed mortgage assets, investing in homes that were either behind on payments or at risk of foreclosure. Over time, these homes had become part of the bank's portfolio, and with them, so too had the owner gained significant leverage. The mortgage bank didn't just hold the deeds to the homes. It had the power to influence the financial futures of every homeowner in the neighborhood. The HOA, it seemed, had no idea that their authority was so easily threatened by a single person's financial maneuvering. Furthermore, the owner's influence didn't stop with the mortgage bank. By controlling the bank, they had the ability to negotiate with financial institutions, restructure loans, and even broker deals that affected the entire neighborhood's property values. The owner could use this leverage to shape the future of the community, potentially halting or delaying any financial penalties the HOA might attempt to impose. They could rewrite the rules of the game in their favor. The owner had also established a network of connections within the financial sector, ensuring that their control wasn't limited to just one institution. The bank itself had become a powerful tool that allowed the owner to subtly shape the neighborhood's economic landscape, all without the HOA ever realizing they were being manipulated. For the first time, the HOA realized that the power they once thought they wielded was not absolute. They were at the mercy of a larger, more complex system that they hadn't even known existed. And now, the owner was in control. This was not a simple dispute over property lines. This was a financial chess match, and the owner had just moved their queen into check. As the full scope of the situation began to sink in, the HOA representatives quickly realized they had overplayed their hand. The immediate shock of the owner's revelation gave way to a frantic scramble as they tried to process the implications. For the first time, they understood that the power dynamics in the neighborhood weren't as straightforward as they had assumed. With the knowledge that the owner controlled the mortgage bank, the HOA's arrogance began to waver. The financial foundation they had always relied on was now under the control of the very person they had sought to intimidate. In a rare moment of vulnerability, the head of the HOA delegation attempted to backpedal, offering vague promises of reevaluation and suggesting a more lenient approach to the Farmhouse's issues. The confident stance they had earlier held had evaporated, replaced with cautious negotiation tactics. The HOA had no leverage now. The owner's financial hold on the entire neighborhood left them powerless. The mood shifted dramatically, and what had started as an aggressive confrontation was quickly becoming an attempt at damage control. The owner, however, wasn't interested in simply forcing the HOA into retreat. Instead, they began to leverage the situation to reshape the future of the neighborhood. With a calm but unwavering tone, the owner made it clear that they would not tolerate any further overreach by the HOA. They could now demand an end to the heavy-handed tactics the HOA had been known for, as well as more transparent governance. The owner's proposal included restructuring the HOA's financial operations, making sure that their influence would no longer go unchecked. In fact, the owner suggested that, moving forward, any decisions made by the HOA would have to be approved by them. Given their newfound position in the community's financial infrastructure, the HOA, caught in a position of weakness, had little choice but to agree to these terms. They had no way to challenge the owner's power without risking an even greater financial catastrophe. What had been a simple attempt to seize a farmhouse had turned into a humbling realization that the owner controlled the strings of the entire neighborhood's financial future. The HOA representatives, now thoroughly outclassed, had no option but to back down, realizing that their authority had been stripped away in a single, calculated move. In the aftermath of the confrontation, the dynamics of the neighborhood shifted in ways that no one could have predicted. The once dominant HOA, which had always acted with impunity, now found itself at the mercy of the owner's financial power. With the newly established agreement in place, the owner was able to reshape the future of the neighborhood, ensuring that the HOA could no longer operate with the same overbearing authority it once had. Gone were the days of arbitrary fines and oppressive regulations. The owner's control over the mortgage bank had granted them a level of influence that no one else in the neighborhood could match. As part of the new arrangement, the HOA's decision-making process was overhauled. The owner ensured that all major decisions ranging from property regulations to financial assessments had to be approved by them first. This check on the HOA's power brought a sense of fairness and balance that had been sorely lacking for years. Homeowners began to feel more empowered, knowing that their interests were now better represented and that the arbitrary enforcement of rules would no longer be tolerated. What had once been a neighborhood ruled by fear and rigid compliance was now evolving into a community where residents felt they had a voice. The owner also saw this as an opportunity to establish more transparent and cooperative leadership within the neighborhood. They pushed for regular town hall meetings where homeowners could express their concerns and collaborate on decisions that affected the whole community. This new approach was a far cry from the top-down, bureaucratic model the HOA had previously enforced. The owner's vision for the neighborhood was one of cooperation and mutual respect, where everyone's interests were taken into account and where the HOA would serve as a facilitator, not a dictator. Financially, the owner ensured that the HOA's budget was reviewed regularly and that it was aligned with the community's best interests. This new level of oversight and accountability eliminated the potential for financial mismanagement, which had plagued the HOA in the past. The owner's influence over the mortgage bank also meant that homeowners were more secure in their financial dealings, knowing that their property values would be protected and that the HOA could no longer take advantage of their vulnerable positions. Ultimately, the HOA's defeat marked the dawn of a new era for the neighborhood, one in which the community was no longer beholden to an oppressive, unaccountable institution, but rather to a balanced, transparent, and financially secure environment led by the owner who had orchestrated this transformation. The farmhouse, once the target of the HOA's overreach, had now become a symbol of the owner's triumph and their commitment to reshaping the future of the entire neighborhood. If you found this story as jaw-dropping as we did, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Stay tuned for more shocking twists, insider stories, and neighborhood drama that you won't want to miss.